tell me about Pascal's wager, and would you make that bet that he did?
Well, the wager being that you either wager for or against God, and you have nothing to lose by betting on God's existence, because if you're right, then you get the big payoff, and so on. It seems like a reasonable argument on its surface, but of course, if you look a little bit deeper, wouldn't God know you were just faking? You were just making a bet. Well, even Pascal said, well, yes, but if you pretend and go along with it, you'll get into it and then become a true believer, not just pretending. Okay, maybe, but what if it's the wrong God? What if you've bet on the wrong God? I mean, there's thousands of gods throughout history. Which is the one you're going to make the gamble on? And it's not something you should take lightly, in my opinion. If you're going to be religious, you need to make a full behavioral commitment, cognitive commitment in your life, change your life, lead a different kind of life, whether it's this religion or that religion. So to me, it's nothing to be lost and everything to be gained. It's a huge investment and commitment, and if you've made the wrong one, well, then you've lost a lot.
So basically what he says is if you bet for God and you're wrong, then you've wasted a few years, which are going to disappear anyway. So you've lost nothing.
But what I do on my Sunday mornings, it matters to me, and whether I go to church or I go for a mountain bike ride, that very much makes a difference. And the
latter can be more spiritual than the former.
For me, absolutely.
But he also says that if you make the bet for God, what you're wagering is minimal, because just these fleeting years that we have, and what you're getting by even having that internal desire, even if you've maybe been pointed a little bit in the wrong direction, that the reward is infinite.
Yes.
So the difference between betting something that's finite and winning something that's infinite, that's a very compelling argument. No?
But what if Satan wants us to, maybe Satan is really God and the material world is paradise, and we've mistakenly given that up and bet on this other thing, this heaven business that doesn't actually exist, and we've really blown it. And we could have had this great life in the here and now, this great materialistic world, and we blew it. We gave all that up for this other world that doesn't actually exist. What if that's the case? Then we've really made a big mistake. I don't think gambling is the way to do it.
So what is?
I think deep and thoughtful inquiry into these deepest questions, and then make your own decision personally on what works for you. I'm a very pragmatist in that sense.
I reflect that I will never know the real answers to any of the questions, the big questions. But I can't avoid the passion and obsession of continuing to deal with them. I've compared it to, you lose a tooth, you put your tongue in it because it doesn't feel good, but you have to do it. These questions are that way. Why is that? Why are we so compelled to feel these questions so deeply?
I think because we're human and we have a big brain capable of contemplating those concepts, and therefore the unexamined life is not worth living, as Socrates said, and I think that's right. That's what it means to be human. Look, I have a young teenage daughter, and I would be thrilled if she became a skeptic and a science person or whatever, but I actually really don't care, and I told her it doesn't matter what the conclusion is you come to about these big questions. The more important thing is, did you think about the steps toward your conclusion? Did you read and see what other people said and contemplate it and give it some deep thought? That is, to me, what you respect in somebody else, that they've at least thought about it, regardless of whether they decided there is a God or there isn't a God, or there's ultimate meaning or there isn't. None of that really matters. What really matters is did you really think about it and give it some deep contemplative thought? That's the important thing.
The fact that these questions are so important to us, is that a significant point in itself, or is that some artificial artifact that evolution brought into our brains because of some other factor?
Well, I mean, we're special in that sense. I don't think my dog can say I'm poor but honest. He doesn't have the brain to think about those kinds of things.
He probably could say, why can't you smell so well?
Yes, that's right. Okay, right. What's it like to be a dog? I don't know. But I do think there's a gradation there in terms of the ability to deceive, for example, and even self-deceive on the part of all primates. So I don't think we're special in some qualitative sense. I just think we have a big enough brain for some other reason that evolution designed for us. And then as a byproduct, we're able to think about these big, big questions.
And byproduct becomes then a nice word for something that's completely artificial, that has no connection with reality.
Yeah, Steve Gould called it a spandrel. It's just sort of this area between two other things that that we fill in with something meaningful, but it wasn't designed that way in the first place. And I think the ability to think about these kinds of big questions had no deep evolutionary adaptive purpose in the Paleolithic. We sort of created that out of the fact that we have culture and we have the time to think about these things and contemplate them and talk about them and even write them down and even have television shows about them. That's all a human construct.
But then it's some artificial thing. It would be better if we spent our time baling hay or something to be productive, rather than doing some artificial thing that has no basis in reality. So everything we're doing here is kind of a waste of time?
Well, no, because I think part of what it means to be human is to contemplate these things. Whether there's some absolute reason for that or not, I think is irrelevant. It is what we do.
But you're artificially then imposing on my being human the fact that this artificial construct has sort of come to us because of our brains, and now we're spending time on it. It really seems like I'm now fooling myself and wasting my time.
Well, I do think there's a hierarchy of needs. And so, yes, you should be baling hay if you have no food to eat and you need to take care of your family. Yeah, okay. But once you've met the base needs and you start moving up the hierarchy, and then that's what it means to be human, is to think about these other concepts, these grand concepts.
Even though that that fact that we're doing this because we're human is an artificial imposition on us for something else. It is not something that is central to our being, but is secondary.
Okay, here's where I think where we're going off here. Artificial versus natural. It's natural to think about these things if you have a brain big enough to do it. It's not artificial. It's perfectly natural to think about these things. It's only a small step from thinking that other humans have intention to thinking that there's entities and spirits we can't see who have intention and influence us. I think that's all part of the natural world. Nothing artificial about it.